Hi, this is Garrett with another episode of Produce Your Freedom. Today we're continuing with the logical fallacy and critical thinking series that we began last episode. I want to start off with a better definition for argument than I gave you before. Last episode I may have kind of made it seem like the argument was the conclusion itself. It's really not. It's the process of establishing the validity of a deduction. Fancy textbook words, not mine, but basically it's the sum of its parts. It's your premises plus your plus the connections you make between them, plus the conclusion you come to. That's kind of your argument, as far as I understand it anyways. So today we're going to talk about propositional fallacies, the first of the categories of formal fallacies we'll be going over. If you need a review, or if you didn't kind of watch the formal informal fallacy video, I highly suggest you go back and do that, but feel free not to. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to start off with is some jargon. A compound proposition is multiple statements and with multiple operators. What we mean by operators are words like and, or, not, if, only if, and only if. Those are the main ones. It may even be all of them as far as I understand it in this context anyways. So just want to reiterate from last episode a little bit. Correctness is not guaranteed by valid logical connections. Therefore, we won't necessarily get a correct conclusion even if all of this stuff is valid. The difference between a validity and correctness that I didn't talk about before. Validity relates to the structure of the argument. The argument's valid if it's put together correctly and you haven't committed one of these fallacies, but the argument is correct if it gives you a correct conclusion. So valid argument plus completely incorrect premises typically leads to incorrect conclusion. All right, so there's three types of propositional fallacies we're going to cover today. We'll start with affirming a disjunct. This is when we say A or B. A is the case, therefore B is not the case. And the way we use English typically, that's true. That's using an or exclusive, basically. I'm going to go back to math for a little bit, math class, without actually doing any numbers, but we probably had those Venn diagram things, right? There's two different circles, and they overlap at a portion in the middle. So this is one set of possibilities, this is another, and this is where both set of possibilities are possible. So in the regular common English language, not in logic language, when we're talking about or, we're typically, the two things are typically exclusive. I'll either go to the mall or I'll go to the movies. Kind of implies I'm not doing both. So in logic, or, just OR, is inclusive. It includes the possibility that both of them, that there's some overlap. It includes that middle region. Likewise, XOR, XOR, is the typical or we're using in English language that implies that both of these things cannot be the case. So what we're doing when you see affirming a disjunct is you're saying that A is true or B is true. A is true, therefore B cannot be true. That's fine if you've crafted your statements such that they are actually fully exclusive of one another, that there can never be a case where A and B are true. But you have to craft your arguments really, really specifically, or your premises rather, really specifically to be able to achieve that, and many times people do not. So the way this is usually used against your critical thinking and mental freedom is by presenting two options that both have some truth in them, both could kind of be the case in depending on the circumstances, and casting it as an A or B issue. Very binary, you only have one of these two choices type thinking. That's usually in politics, you're talking about Democrat versus Republican, or you're either for this or you're against this, and there's no nuanced position in the middle. And what that's designed to do is to cause people to have conflicts, to divide along an issue, and then have a politician or someone be able to take advantage of that by appealing to one side or the other of that. It's kind of this divide and conquer type strategy. Meanwhile, we're arguing with each other and I won't go too far into it, but really we're all facing the same sorts of difficulties and lack of freedom in the same areas, but we're stuck arguing with each other, typically over issues that don't affect our freedom personally. That's a kind of a common trick. So by acknowledging the fact that many times there's an area where the two overlap, we can get a little further. Keep in mind, the reason one person believes one thing and one person believes the other is because there's some truth to both. So that by that very definition, if enough people believe it, and people tend to be rational and well thought out, enough people believe in either issue, there's probably some truth to both. Therefore, the or probably is not exclusive in reality. All right. The next two we're going to go over are pretty easy because they're the inverse of each other. So the first one is affirming the consequent. That's when we say, if A, then B, B happened, therefore B, therefore not A. So an example might be, if it's sunny, I'll go outside. That's sunny being A, outside being B. I went outside, therefore it's sunny. Well, that's not true. I didn't say there was no other condition under which I would go outside. If it's sunny, I'll go outside. If it's cloudy, I might go outside, right? So there's other conditions there, obviously. The inverse of that is denying the antecedent. And that is, if they, then B, it's not A, therefore not B. That doesn't quite work either, because there are a lot of situations where B could be the case. The key behind both of these is that we are led down a little bit of a path, and we're starting with the if A, and that's really the important part. Is the rest of the statement is hinged on the fact that this first part is the case. The rest of that particular statement doesn't mean there couldn't be other statements that involve either of these pieces that give you some other result, but you can't argue them backwards because of those other circumstances. So an example of denying the antecedent would be, we said if A then B, so if it's a baseball then it's round, then we're saying the next part of the statement, it's not A, therefore it cannot be B. It's not a baseball, therefore it's not round. That doesn't add up. It's just not a baseball. It could be a cantaloupe, it'd still be round. Hope you enjoyed the episode. I know this is kind of dry textbook stuff sometimes, but those are the first few. The big one to look out for, like I said, is when you're being presented with only two choices, A or B. Make sure there aren't a whole bunch more that you're missing. And when you start looking at those other options, I think you'll be a lot more free in general. And then remember, in the second two, the big takeaway is remember that we're focusing the statement around the fact that A is the case. And if A was not the case, then we're talking about a totally different set of circumstances, possibly, and then we have to kind of reevaluate the argument. All right, hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day. Remember, produce your freedom or life will produce your chains. I'm out.